Hello, this is Mrs. Average Joe Cyclist, Maggie Nielsen, and I'm narrating this ride that Joe's taken on the Central Valley Greenway from Science World in downtown Vancouver to the New Westminster Quay in New Westminster. This is a 24-kilometer ride that takes you on shared sidewalks, shared roadways, and also on some off-road paths as well. And as you can see right now, we are heading out of Falls Creek and onto a path that will take us south until we reach up with the Central Valley Greenway. You're going to be on the Seaside Route, then Ontario, and then finally get onto the Central Valley Greenway. Now this ride is 24 kilometers. We've condensed the tape so that you get the highlights. The ride should take anywhere from 60 to 90 minutes or even longer if you take some stops along the way. And here we are on the Ontario Bike Route. To our right is the Athletes Village, which is Vancouver's newest neighborhood. The site was developed for the athletes attending the Winter Olympics in 2010 and is now becoming a mixed-use neighborhood of some retail and lots of residential and lots of cycling routes. And as you can see on the left, there's still some building sites, so it's definitely a work in progress. Now you're transitioning onto First Avenue, which is going to lead you to the Central Valley Greenway. As you can see, you're on a shared road with cars, and that will be the reality for about the first 3 kilometers. And this area that we're heading into on our left here is the education area. The new Skytrain, the Millennium Line, opened a number of years ago, and with that station came campuses of the universities. Of course, when you've got cyclists, or when you've got transit, you've got students, and it makes sense to have some campuses here. So we have Emily Carr, the University of British Columbia, BC Institute of Technology, Simon Fraser University, and Vancouver City College all have campuses within walking distance of the Skytrain station, which is just up ahead. And as you can see coming along, there's a great many driveways, so you have to use a lot of caution when crossing over to make sure that the motorists see you. Vancouver, a green painted sidewalk is code for a cycle route, and motorists are slowly learning to respect these. This road, as you can see, is fairly light. There's the Skytrain station on your left. Now you're coming up on a very steep hill. No shame at all in walking if you need to. And you're coming up to the intersection of Great Northern Way and Clark Drive, 2 major truck routes in the city. So we do recommend that you get off and cross over both crosswalks until you rejoin the separated sidewalk, shared sidewalk. I think that's absolutely brilliant that the Brinks truck is backing up out of the cycle lane. I wish more motorists would do that. So now, as you can see, you're going to rejoin the Greenway and be on a shared sidewalk. Your next turn will be a right-hand turn onto North Grandview Highway. And at this point, when you turn right, you will leave the sidewalk and you will be on a demarked cycling lane on a roadway shared with traffic. Again, this is a relatively quiet street, so there's not going to be a ferocious amount of traffic, but you do have to keep your wits about you. Your first intersection up ahead is going to be Woodland Drive, and it is notorious. It's five streets coming together, cycling, traffic, pedestrians. It's absolutely crazy, so do be careful. And then in this neighborhood as well, the next intersection is Commercial Drive, and that is a very vibrant, diverse area. If you plan to take a drink or a stop, this would be an ideal area to do so. Even though it's early in the ride, it's a wonderfully diverse neighborhood with lots of entertainment, shops, restaurants, and pubs. As you can see, off to our right is the Skytrain. This is the commercial Broadway station. So if you determine that the first part of the ride is a little bit too on-road for you, you can always take the Skytrain off-peak hours to the Broadway commercial station, and then you are within a few hundred yards of joining the off-road section of the Greenway that's coming up ahead. Here you've got a dedicated bike and bus area, so just be wary of the buses and stay to the left because their only choice is to turn right, and you don't want to be pinned down by them. As you can see, coming into view up ahead is a green uncontrolled crosswalk that you can take over 6 lanes of traffic. If you're nervous or inexperienced, go off on the sidewalk on your left here and cross over at the controlled intersection. Now, Joe obviously is an experienced rider. He's doing this quite well, but it's also 7 o'clock at night, so the traffic is light. And just diagonally here off to your right, we're going to finally get off-road. And this is running through a residential neighborhood. It's absolutely lovely. This part of the ride will be a combination of dedicated cycling areas, share the road, share the sidewalk. Right now there are 2 sidewalks, and you will share this area with residential traffic, but as you can see, it's relatively light, and even in the daytime it's also relatively light. And again, you can see the yellow signposts are denoting other cycling routes that are intersecting. The route is very well marked, so you can look off on other routes. So now you have a dedicated bike area. You're coming up to Nainamo Street. This is a controlled intersection, but it's a new one, and motorists still don't seem to have it on their radar. So make sure you see all the traffic stopped before you proceed through. I have seen some close calls on this intersection. Now, the area you're coming into now is a short span where you're going to be sharing the road with residential area traffic again, usually not too heavy. And there's going to be the next 2 intersections are going to be slightly tricky. You've got a bit of a dogleg right to come into the cycling lane, which is now dedicated. Share the route with pedestrians, but you've got these uncontrolled intersections, and people are coming off the Grandview Highway, which is running parallel on our right. And for the rest of the route now, we'll be traveling for quite some distance underneath the Skytrain tracks. There's another intersection uncontrolled, so again, just watch carefully before you cross, and you'll need a bell to alert pedestrians that you're coming up on them. We're traveling under the Millennium Skytrain route, which is the line that was built after Expo, and this travels through Burnaby and New Westminster. This area that you're in right now is being built up as a tech park, so high-tech industries coming into this area. There's also an art school. So this is one of the nicer parts of the route where you really don't have to worry too much about traffic. And the further east you travel, the less you really have to worry about pedestrians. This is a very wicked corner. On to the left, the shrubberies and the post for the Skytrain really do block your vision. And this area, while light right now, usually has a lot of people coming to and from the station and waiting for buses. So do be careful and use your bell if you've got one to alert people that you're coming around that corner. Now once you get clear of the Skytrain station, you are again on a route that is not heavily used by pedestrians and it's completely off-road. So it's very, very nice and it's wonderfully paved. So it's not a teeth-chattering experience. And this is the final leg of the Greenway that's in Vancouver as we cross over Boundary Road. This is now heading us into Burnaby. And once again, it's a controlled intersection, but relatively new, so make sure that all the motorists have come to a standstill. And yes, as you approach Home Depot, it's ready to turn right. Now coming up on your right is a little bit of a dipsy-doodle to cross over Gilmore Avenue onto Still Creek. Gilmore Avenue, as you can see from the yellow signage, is another cycling route called the Sea to River, which runs from Burrard Inlet to the Fraser River. And as you can see, we're going around all these gates. There's two driveways up ahead. Be careful, they're heavily used during business hours by truck traffic. Crossing over Still Creek, the actual waterway. And on this section of the bike route, you will cross over on the sidewalk here, and you'll actually be on a sidewalk leading into a trail. So you won't be crossing over to get back on the street. And nice to see that motorists still will cut you off. And now you're coming into a recently developed business park. The traffic is usually quite quiet here. Due to its proximity to Skytrain, lots of people get to their jobs using transit as opposed to cars. The area up ahead, obviously we're off-road, which is lovely. The area coming up ahead is prone to flooding, so if you're riding in the rain, use extra caution coming through here. And if it is flooded, you could just go back out to the roadway and detour around. Now coming out of this little private pathway up ahead, you'll follow the sidewalk again. You're still on Still Creek. You can see we've got a truck here invading the crosswalk, but we've still got room to get around him. And again, we're staying onto a sidewalk. We'll share it with pedestrians, but we'll definitely be safe from traffic. And there is a significant amount of traffic on this area during the day. Now you're leaving the business park and you're entering into a slightly more industrial area. Again, you're going to stay on the sidewalk, so you are completely out of traffic. Again, in this area as well, the pedestrian traffic is relatively light. However, you are going to notice there's a lot of driveways as you travel this section of Still Creek. So be very careful as you cross these driveways because they haven't been painted green yet. And this is relatively new ground for the motorists in the area. This route, it's important to point out that it's completely lit. So if you have decided to stay down in New Westminster and have some dinner, you've got no danger of being unable to come home on your bicycle if you wish to do so. There's one small area that is an exception, however, we'll show you that coming up ahead. Now you're crossing Norland, and again, you'll stay on this sidewalk to meet up with the trail. And you're going into another off-road section. You will share this with hikers and pedestrians, but again, the traffic is relatively light. And this particular section is now going to be gravel as opposed to paved. Again, you can see the yellow signs, so it's very well lit, or very well signed, so you can find your way. And you're still following along Still Creek on your right-hand side. This Still Creek will empty into Burnaby Lake, and we're going to pass by Burnaby Lake Park on our way. And you're just coming under the Kensington overpass, and as you can see by the yellow signs, there's another cycling route that will take you up through the middle of Burnaby as opposed to skirting around the edges as we're doing right now. And you can see the Skytrain tracks. We're not directly under them anymore, but they are to our left-hand side. And on the right-hand side here is Burnaby Lake Park, the beginning of it. It stretches quite a number of kilometers down to the other end, which flows into the Brunette River. Here is the Winston Street Bridge, which is the connection to the next section of the route, which unfortunately is putting us back on road. But as Joe's commentary below says, it is. It's a magnificent bridge. It gets you over a very, very busy street. There's a Skytrain connection here, so if you are tired or you want to save the rest for another day, you can join up with the Skytrain. Now you're going to come to a crosswalk that will take you to the other side of Winston Street, and you'll be traveling in a denoted cycling lane with the flow of traffic. Now it's after 7 o'clock, so Joe is going to pull a bonehead move and not use the crosswalk. But always use the crosswalk, particularly now Joe's traveling the wrong way in the cycling lane because there's a car coming. Okay, we have edited out a lot of the traveling along Winston. I will just talk you through it. You'll be on Winston Street for at least 20 minutes, and it is fairly busy during the day, so just be careful. There are also some rolling hills, some long inclines, though not too steep. And here again, you've got another transition. We're coming off of Winston Street. We're traveling on Caribou Road. And our next section is going to take us left into a dead-end street and then onto an off-road trail. This is an absolutely lovely spot of the Greenway. It's the Brunette Forest Trail. This is the section that is unlit, so if you are coming back in the evening, best to get through here in daylight, and then no worries for the rest of the route. You're traveling alongside the Brunette River now, and this is a popular destination for dog walkers and pedestrians, also graffiti artists, so do keep your eyes open. It is gravel, so it can be a little bit bumpy. It's not terribly comfortable, and again, we've edited it down. It's a nice long ride, maybe 10 to 15 minutes. And now you're getting into a transition that takes us alongside of North Road. North Road is the dividing point between Burnaby, Coquitlam, and New Westminster. We're not going to enter Coquitlam. We're going to follow this road right on the sidewalk and cross at a pedestrian light and then enter another off-road trail. We'll be traveling through a parking lot, so we will have cars, but we won't be in traffic. And as you can see up ahead, there's our light. We're heading into New Westminster. And we'll cross over here entering Hume Park. As you can see, we're traveling up the street. And now in this area, you can actually stop, and off to your left is a public restroom, one of the only ones on the Greenway, unfortunately. And you'll continue to skirt around the edge of Hume Park and then come onto a city street, Fader Avenue, which again is a shared cycle pathway, and a very nice diverse neighborhood awaits you. And obviously with the park, you're going to have lots of parents dropping off and picking up kids, so you do have to have some patience and pick your way through this section. The reason I say New Westminster is a diverse neighborhood is that this is one of the province's oldest cities. It was the first capital of British Columbia. And so the houses range from some very old Victorians to buildings and houses that have been put in every decade since. So it's quite diverse. It's certainly not a master plan community. It was allowed to grow and sprawl as was necessary. And I find that's interesting. You just crossed over Braid Street, which again is a truck route, so be careful to use the crossing signal as opposed to trying to dart across the 6 lanes of traffic. This road is going to dead end at Sherbrooke Street. You'll see directly ahead of you is the Royal Columbian Hospital, and you're going to turn right and go up a slight uphill, not terribly challenging. But you are getting towards the end of the ride and you might be feeling it a little bit in your legs. Royal Columbian is the major trauma center with a fully functioning emergency room. And you're turning onto East Columbia Street here, still following past the hospital on your left. And you're in a bike lane on a relatively trafficked road. This is 7 o'clock, as we mentioned before, so there's not a lot of traffic. Down at the bottom of this road, you're going to come up to a traffic light right here where Brunette Avenue flows into Columbia Street. Joe's taking the sidewalk, but as you can see, it's very narrow coming up, and if there's a pedestrian, it can be quite dangerous. I like to go with the traffic on the road because the lane is wide enough to accommodate, and then as Joe is coming up to this next corner, I would come out of this lane and jump back up onto the sidewalk. If you're coming the other way, this can be a very stressful part, and if you need to get off and walk, that is perfectly fine. Beats falling into traffic. This is a heavily used truck route, and you will see 18-wheelers here, especially during business hours and also out of business hours. Now this section here becomes a lot more pleasant. You're still sharing the sidewalk with pedestrians. Nothing is demarked, but it is wide enough that you don't have to feel nervous. And you're coming up into a new development straight up ahead called Victoria Hill. And this particular route is going to be a slow and steady climb. There's only one steep part that is coming up relatively quickly, but then once you get past that steep part, you're going to continuously climb until you get to the intersection of McBride Boulevard and Columbia Street. Again, sometimes I can drive it, sometimes I can't. And now you're at the intersection of Columbia and McBride. This is a very, very treacherous corner, so use your crossing signal and follow the instructions because there are some rapid right turns that come off of Columbia to travel onto McBride to our right. Again, you've come across now and you're still on a nice wide sidewalk. Joe just went past the merge for the Pattullo Bridge, so just be careful that you have traffic merging onto the bridge. Now your protected lane has ended and you're back onto Columbia Street. The speed limit on Columbia Street is 30 kilometers an hour, so while you are fully on in traffic and there is on-street parking, traffic is supposed to be traveling at quite a slow speed. You'll travel on Columbia Street for a number of blocks, and then your next turn is a left-hand turn on Begbie Street, which will lead you into the New Westminster Quay. Coming into the New Westminster Quay, there is a lot to do down here, and this area is under complete state of redevelopment. Over to the left, past this parking garage, right along the water is the newly developed Pier Park. To our right, and Joe will look in these directions as we cross the light. To our right is the Fraser River Discovery Center, which has a lot of very interesting information about the history and the science of the Fraser River, which is a fully functioning working river. And then past the Fraser River Discovery Center, you come into the New Westminster Quay, and you've reached your destination. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have, and there's lots to do at the New Westminster Quay, so take a good time and explore. Joe's actually looks as if he's heading towards the Pier Park, but if you were to go to the Pier Park, this is exactly the way that you would walk, just along the water. And now he's turning back towards the quay, past the Discovery Center, and towards the market. Lots of restaurants, bakeries, interesting food stalls, and just a place to sit and relax. Sometimes there's entertainment during the summer hours and long weekends, so lots to see and do. And here you're going to end the ride at the largest tin soldier in the world.